What if everything you built with love, every dollar you saved, every dream you protected for years disappeared in flames within minutes? What if the person you love most in this world was suddenly trapped inside that fire, fighting for life, caught between breath and silence, between hope and goodbye? Tonight on Viva Flix Now, we bring you a heartbreaking and deeply emotional story that has left fans of 90 Day Fiancé in shock. This is the story of Sumit Singh and Jenny Slatin, a couple who crossed continents for love, who risked family, culture, and everything familiar, only to face the cruelest test of fate. Sumit Singh and his wife Jenny Slatin invested their lifelong savings, nearly $1.2 million, into building a restaurant. Through years of hard work and dedication, they were finally running the business successfully. But yesterday afternoon, tragedy struck. An unexpected incident caused a devastating fire to break out at the restaurant. During the blaze, Sumit Singh was trapped inside. Nearly 40% of his body was severely burned. He is now in the ICU, fighting for his life. Jenny Slatin has been left shattered, both mentally and emotionally. She is not only facing the fear of losing her beloved husband, but also the reality that their dream restaurant, built with years of sacrifice, has been reduced to ashes. The family has suffered a massive financial loss of nearly $1.5 million. Today, everything they worked for has collapsed. On one side, the restaurant is gone. On the other, Sumit is battling for survival. Stay with us, because once this story begins, there is no turning back. For Sumit Singh and Jenny Slatin, success never came easily. Their love story was never smooth or simple, and it was never accepted without resistance. They came from two completely different worlds, with clashing cultures, questioning families, and a reality TV spotlight that magnified every struggle. But through it all, they held on to one dream. A dream of independence, a dream of dignity, a dream of building something that belonged only to them. After years of criticism, uncertainty, and emotional struggle, they made the boldest decision of their lives. They invested every dollar they had saved, their entire lifetime savings of nearly $1.2 million, into building a restaurant. This was not just a business. It was their proof to the world. Proof that their love was real. Proof that their sacrifices were worth it. Proof that they could stand on their own feet. The restaurant was not built overnight. There were sleepless nights, construction delays, and financial pressure that nearly broke them. But they did not give up. Jenny managed operations with discipline and care, while Sumit handled suppliers, staff, and daily responsibilities. Slowly, the restaurant began to grow, not just in profit, but in reputation. Locals started recognizing the place. Regular customers returned. Reviews improved. For the first time in years, peace entered their lives. They finally believed the worst was behind them. Sumit often said the restaurant was more than a source of income. It was their second chance at life. Jenny believed it was the foundation that would secure their future as they grew older. They had plans, ideas for expansion, and dreams of long-term stability. What they didn't know was that everything they had built through years of pain and perseverance would soon be reduced to ashes within minutes. And that the fire destroying their dream would also try to take Sumit's life. Before the fire, before the restaurant, before the ICU machines and silent hospital corridors, there was love. A love the world never believed in. When Sumit Singh and Jenny Slatin chose each other, they didn't just fall in love. They stepped into a storm of judgment, cultural barriers, age differences, and family opposition. From the very beginning, their relationship was questioned. Friends doubted them. Society mocked them. Even their families struggled to accept what they could not understand. Jenny left behind her familiar life, her comfort, and her homeland, believing love was enough. Sumit stood torn between tradition and the woman who had become his entire world. There were moments when walking away would have been easier. Moments when the pressure became unbearable. Moments when tears replaced words. They faced battles most couples never experience. Public criticism, cultural humiliation, and emotional exhaustion. Their love was dissected on television, judged by millions, and debated by strangers who never knew the full truth. But despite everything, they stayed. Not because life was easy, but because letting go felt impossible. For years, uncertainty followed them. Financial instability haunted their future. Every plan felt fragile, always one step away from collapse. That was when the idea of the restaurant was born. It wasn't just a business decision. It was an emotional one. The restaurant symbolized freedom, independence from criticism, a future where they no longer had to explain or defend their love. Sumit believed financial success would finally silence doubt. Jenny believed it was their last chance to create security before time slipped away. They poured not just money, but hope into the project. Every brick laid felt like a declaration that they belonged together. Every customer served felt like a small victory against years of judgment. For the first time, they were respected not as a controversial couple, but as hard-working partners. When the restaurant finally opened, it felt like a quiet miracle. It gave them a new identity. After years of being known only for controversy, they were now known for effort, discipline, and resilience. The restaurant was modest, but full of intention. Every detail reflected their shared vision. Sumit focused on warmth and hospitality, while Jenny ensured structure and consistency. They were present every single day. Sumit arrived early to manage suppliers, inspect the kitchen, and motivate staff. Jenny handled accounts, customer service, and daily operations with determination. At first, business was slow. Some days, only a few customers walked in. Expenses felt heavier than hope. But they adapted. They improved service, adjusted pricing, and listened carefully to feedback. Slowly, things changed. Regular customers returned. Reviews improved. Locals began recommending the restaurant. Revenue stabilized. Staff morale grew stronger. For the first time in a long while, Sumit and Jenny slept without fear tightening their chests. The restaurant gave them routine, purpose, a reason to wake up every morning, a shared responsibility that strengthened their bond. They began talking about the future again. Expansion plans, renovations, even dreams of opening a second branch one day. Most importantly, the restaurant restored their confidence. It proved that love wasn't their only strength. Teamwork was. Against all odds, they had built something real. And people who once doubted them finally respected them. Until fate stepped in and everything changed in a single moment. Customers praised their dedication. Staff trusted their leadership. For a brief, beautiful period, life felt balanced. There were no cameras, no public judgment, no family pressure. Just two people running a business side by side. But life has a cruel way of breaking calm moments without warning. While Sumit and Jenny were busy planning their next chapter, fate was quietly preparing a devastating interruption. One ordinary afternoon would turn everything upside down. The restaurant that had given them life would soon become the place where tragedy began. The day the fire broke out did not begin with fear. It began like any other hardworking day. For Sumit Singh and Jenny Slatton, it was one of those rare moments when life felt stable, almost generous. The morning started early. Sumit arrived before sunrise. He unlocked the doors, checked inventory, and reviewed the day's reservations. Business had been improving steadily, and that afternoon was expected to be busy. Several large orders were scheduled, and the staff seemed unusually motivated. Jenny arrived later, carrying paperwork and a quiet smile. She reviewed finances, double-checked supplier invoices, and spoke briefly with the manager about upcoming plans. There was talk of upgrading equipment, maybe even renovating part of the dining area. Nothing felt wrong. In fact, everything felt right. Customers arrived steadily throughout the day. Compliments flowed freely. A regular customer told Jenny, "This place feels like home." She smiled because that was exactly what they had hoped to build. Around midday, Jenny stepped out briefly to handle an external task related to the business. Before leaving, she glanced back at the restaurant entrance. Sumit was inside, focused, moving confidently between the kitchen and the dining floor. That image would later haunt her. Inside, operations continued smoothly. Staff followed routine. The kitchen was busy but controlled. No one noticed anything unusual. No warning signs. No alarms. No sense of danger. Then suddenly everything changed. What started as a small, unnoticed incident escalated with terrifying speed. Smoke began filling the kitchen. Flames spread faster than anyone could react. Panic erupted. Customers screamed. Staff rushed toward exits. In the chaos, Sumit was still inside. Some tried to reach him. Others shouted his name. But the fire was unforgiving. Within minutes, the restaurant that once symbolized hope became a burning trap. By the time emergency services arrived, thick smoke had swallowed the building. Flames tore through the structure, destroying years of effort in moments. And inside that inferno, Sumit was fighting for his life. Outside, Jenny received a phone call that shattered her reality. There was a fire. Sumit was trapped. No one knew how badly he was hurt. In an instant, a day that began with hope became the darkest chapter of their lives. Fires do not announce themselves. They do not give warnings. They arrive quietly, then take everything. Inside the restaurant, the first signs were subtle. A sharp smell. A thin line of smoke rising upward. In a busy kitchen, these things are easy to miss. Equipment runs hot. Orders pile up. Focus narrows. No one imagined that within minutes, the place would become an inferno. What began as a small ignition turned deadly fast. Heat surged through the kitchen. Flames caught in unexpected places. The ventilation system carried smoke deep into the building, blinding eyes and stealing breath. Panic spread in waves. Chairs scraped. Plates shattered. People rushed toward exits they could barely see. In the confusion, someone yelled for Sumit. He did not run. He did not freeze. Witnesses later said he moved back toward the kitchen, toward the danger, trying to help, trying to shut things down, trying to make sure everyone else got out. It was instinct, responsibility, the weight of ownership pressing down in the worst possible moment. But the fire moved faster than intention. Smoke thickened, turning air into poison. Flames climbed walls, devoured ceilings, and swallowed sound. Emergency alarms wailed, but were drowned by the roar of the blaze. Somewhere inside, Sumit was trapped, coughing, disoriented, struggling to find a path through heat and darkness. Outside, people screamed for help. Phones were raised. Someone called emergency services. Another tried to re-enter, but was forced back by heat so intense it felt like a solid wall. The building itself seemed to breathe fire. When firefighters arrived, the scene was already catastrophic. They pushed forward inch by inch through collapsing sections and blinding smoke. Every second mattered. When they finally reached him, the damage had already been done. Sumit was pulled from the flames with severe burns covering nearly 40% of his body. His clothes were charred. His skin blistered. His breathing was shallow. He was alive, but barely. Across town, Jenny was racing back, heart pounding, unable to fully process what she was being told. The restaurant was on fire. Sumit was inside. No one could promise her anything. By the time she arrived, the building was a skeleton of smoke and flame. The dream they built was gone, and Sumit's fight for survival had only just begun. Inside the burning restaurant, time stopped behaving normally. Seconds felt like hours. Breathing felt impossible. Every movement demanded strength Sumit did not know he still had. When the fire fully erupted, he was already deep inside. The kitchen, once familiar and controlled, had transformed into a maze of smoke, sparks, and collapsing shadows. Visibility dropped to nothing. Heat pressed against his skin like a living force. He tried to find his way out, moving by memory, counting steps, reaching for walls, searching for exits he had used thousands of times before. But panic does not follow logic. Smoke filled his lungs. His eyes burned. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. At one point, he stumbled. Witnesses later said that was the moment everything changed. Flames rolled across the ceiling. Embers rained down. Parts of the structure weakened and groaned under the heat. Sumit's clothes caught fire. Pain surged through his body, sharp and overwhelming. Instinct told him to move, but his strength was fading. Still, he did not scream. Firefighters later said he was found near a service area, curled slightly, trying to shield himself. Even in those final moments inside, he was fighting. Not just the fire, but the idea of giving up. Outside, hoses thundered. Sirens screamed. People shouted his name again and again, powerless to reach him. The building resisted, as if determined to take everything it could. When rescuers finally broke through, the heat was so intense they had to retreat once before pushing in again. Protective gear melted at the edges. Oxygen tanks hissed. They found Sumit unconscious but alive. His body bore the cost of every second spent trapped. Nearly 40% burned, including critical areas. His pulse was weak, his breathing shallow. He was rushed into an ambulance, wrapped in emergency coverings, as machines took over what his body could no longer do alone. Across the city, Jenny was already breaking down in a hospital corridor before even seeing him. Deep down, she knew. Those moments inside the fire had changed everything. And now survival came with a terrifying question. Even if he lived, what kind of life would be waiting for him? Hospitals have a sound of their own. Not screams, not crying, just silence, broken by machines measuring how close someone is to life or death. When Sumit Singh was rushed into the intensive care unit, doctors moved quickly. Burns covered nearly 40% of his body. Deep, severe, dangerous. His condition was critical. Every decision had to be immediate. Every second mattered. He was sedated almost instantly. Breathing tubes replaced his breath. Monitors filled the room with steady beeps. Machines began doing the work his body could no longer manage alone. Doctors explained the situation carefully, but honestly. The burns were extensive. The risk of infection was extremely high. The next 72 hours would decide everything. Outside the ICU doors, Jenny Slatton sat frozen. After surviving years of public criticism and judgment, nothing had prepared her for this moment. Outside the ICU doors, Jenny Slatton sat frozen. After surviving years of public criticism and judgment, nothing had prepared her for this moment. The hallway felt endless, cold, and unfamiliar. Every sound made her flinch. Every time a doctor walked past, her heart jumped, hoping for answers and fearing them at the same time. She replayed the day again and again in her mind. The smile that morning, the calm conversations, the way Sumit moved confidently through the restaurant. She wondered how a life could change so completely in a matter of minutes. One moment, they were planning renovations and future growth. The next, she was waiting to learn if the man she loved would survive the night. Doctors came and went. Nurses adjusted machines. Words like critical, unstable, and severe burns echoed in her ears, even when no one was speaking. Jenny tried to be strong, but strength felt meaningless in that place. She held onto her phone, staring at it without seeing anything, unsure who to call or what to say. When she was finally allowed to see him, the sight almost broke her. Sumit lay motionless, surrounded by tubes, wires, and monitors. His body was wrapped in bandages. His face, swollen and burned, barely looked like the man she knew. Machines breathed for him. Machines measured his heartbeat. It felt unreal, like stepping into someone else's nightmare. She reached for his hand carefully, afraid of hurting him. His skin felt fragile, unfamiliar. She whispered his name, not knowing if he could hear her, but hoping he could feel that she was there. Tears fell silently. There were no dramatic words, no speeches, just quiet prayers spoken in her heart. The doctors explained the situation again. Nearly 40% of his body had been burned. Multiple surgeries would likely be needed. Skin grafts, long-term treatment, a high risk of infection. Even if he survived, recovery would be long, painful, and uncertain. They could not promise anything beyond the next few days. The next 72 hours became a test of endurance. Jenny barely slept. She stayed near the ICU, leaving only when nurses insisted. Time lost meaning. Day and night blurred together. She lived between updates, clinging to small signs of hope. A stable heartbeat. A slight improvement in oxygen levels. Any positive change, no matter how small. Messages from friends and fans began arriving. People who had followed their journey sent prayers and support. Some shared memories. Others shared shock and disbelief. Jenny read them quietly, grateful but overwhelmed. The attention felt distant compared to the reality unfolding in front of her. Meanwhile, the restaurant stood as a burned shell. Smoke damage, charred walls, ruined equipment, years of effort erased. Investigators began examining the cause of the fire. Insurance questions surfaced. Financial concerns loomed quietly in the background, but Jenny could barely think about money. None of it mattered if Sumit did not survive. Doctors performed the first emergency procedures. They cleaned the burns, removed damaged tissue, and stabilized his condition. Each surgery was a risk. Each hour carried uncertainty. Jenny waited through every operation, sitting in the same chair, staring at the same floor, counting seconds without realizing it. There were moments when fear overwhelmed her completely. Moments when she imagined life without him. The silence of their home. The empty space at the restaurant. The future they planned disappearing just like the building had. Those thoughts terrified her more than anything else. But there were also moments of strength she didn't know she had. She